Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're looking beyond just the specs. We're dissecting strategy. Vivo's just launched its new flagship line, and we've got a rapid, detailed review of the one that really matters, the Vivo X300 Pro.
That's right. Vivo's clearly making a play for the top tier here. And for you, the learner, our job is to, cut through the marketing buzz around the standard X300 and really focus just on this Pro version. It's absolutely packed with advanced hardware, especially in the camera department.
Yeah.
We need to figure out what makes this Pro really stand out and maybe what trade-offs they made to get there.
Exactly. The sources paint it as a kind of zero-compromise effort for a cutting-edge experience, particularly aimed at, photo buffs. So let's unpack this tech piece by piece, see if the features really stack up against the size and the power needed.
Yeah. Okay, let's start with the outside. The design, how it feels. If you've seen the Vivo X series before, you'll recognize the look. It's got that big circular camera window, right? Very prominent, black center of the back. Kind of screams, I'm a camera phone. And that whole look, it's tied directly to the function, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're still working with Zeiss, which gives it instant credibility and maybe some actual weight, too. But yeah, the sources do confirm there's a pretty significant bulge back there for the cameras.
Right. A prominent protrusion is how they put it.
Yeah.
And that big module, plus the power demands we're expecting, it leads to something pretty important. The weight.
Yeah.
It's noted as being somewhat heavy, 226 grams. That's noticeable.
It is.
Sounds like Vivo prioritized pure capability over maybe a long-term comfort in one hand. That's a trade-off you need to be aware of.
Definitely a key trade-off. But to be fair, the rest of the build sounds really premium. Glossy glass on the back, aluminum frame, and the front is, all screen, basically, with that little punch hole camera in the middle.
And durability seems solid, too. This is interesting. It's got the usual IP68 water and dust resistance, but also IP69. What does that actually mean, IP69? Is that much different?
Yeah, it's actually quite significant. IP69 means it can handle more than just being dunked in water. It's about resisting close range, high pressure, and high temperature water jets. Think like almost industrial cleaning levels. It says a lot about how well this thing is sealed.
Wow. Okay. That's reassuring. For unlocking, you've got the ultrasonic fingerprint sensor under the screen, nice premium touch, and sound.
Dual speakers, high-quality stereo sound. Good for media.
Right. And speaking of media, let's get to that display. It's a 6.78-inch LTPO AMOLED, 1.5K resolution.
Yeah, and that LTPO part is pretty cool. LTPO, it stands for low temperature polycrystalline oxide. Basically, it lets the screen change its refresh rate on the fly. It goes up to a super smooth 120 hertz, but it can also drop way down.
Why is that variability important?
Well, it saves a ton of battery. You don't need 120 hertz all the time, like when you're just reading static text.
Yeah.
So it dials back, saves power. Smart stuff.
Makes sense. Smart power management built right in. What else stood out about the screen?
Brightness was a big point. The source really emphasized it's very bright, so you can actually see it clearly outside, even in direct sun. That's a common frustration solved, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, full media support, HDR 10 plus SPO, Dolby Vision. It should look excellent.
Okay, a display like that, big, bright, fast, needs some serious muscle behind it. So let's flip it over metaphorically and look inside. Segment 2. The internals, the power, the software. What processor did they go with?
They went with the Flagship Dimensity 9500 from MediaTek. That chip is a clear signal, high performance, aimed right at heavy tasks, gaming, obviously, but also, crucially, the kind of intense image processing we're going to talk about with the camera.
And they didn't skimp on the supporting cast either, did they, memory-wise?
Absolutely not. The configuration mentioned is, frankly, massive. 16 gigabytes of RAM paired with 512 gigs of storage. That's desktop-level territory almost. It should handle pretty much anything you throw at it, multitasking included.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting system-wise. This isn't just running old software. It ships with Vivo's brand new UI, OriginOS 6.
Yes, this is super important context. OriginOS 6 is built on the newest Android base available, Android 16. That's a big deal because it means they can tap into all the latest core optimizations for speed, for security, right from day one. Competitors often take months to catch up.
So what's the promise with OriginOS 6? Just faster or more?
Well, speed, yes. But the source mentions two key things: greater fluidity and big improvements in visual effects. Fluidity probably means, making those 120 hertz transitions feel even smoother, more responsive.
Yeah.
And visual enhancements. That usually means a refreshed look, maybe slicker widgets, better ambient display stuff, maybe some fancy animations that don't hog the processor. It feels like they're really trying to make the software feel as premium as the hardware.
So it's not just about the raw chip power. They're tailoring the OS to really use it well.
Exactly. They're aiming for like a fully optimized system, making sure that running that huge camera sensor doesn't get bogged down by clunky software layers.
All right, let's move to the main event for the X300 Pro, the camera system. The source called it a fearsome imaging machine. Quite dramatic. And obviously, those Zeiss lenses are front and center.
Fearsome seems about right, honestly. Let's break it down. The main lens, 50 megapixels, very wide f1.57 aperture. That means it should pull in a lot of light. And crucially, it has OIS, optical image stabilization.
Right, the hardware stabilization for shaky hands.
Exactly. Helps keep things sharp, especially in low light, and smooths out video. Then there's the ultra-wide, also 50 megapixels, slightly smaller f2.0 aperture. But the real headliner, the one causing all the buzz, is the periscope telephoto.
Yeah, tell me about that one.
It's a monster. 200 megapixels, 200. This lets it achieve, according to the source, 20x zoom with clear quality.
Okay, hold on. 200 megapixels. It sounds a bit like just chasing numbers, doesn't it? Spec sheet fluff. Is there actual evidence this massive number translates to better zoom compared to, say, a lower megapixel sensor with really good optics and stabilization?
That's the right question to ask. Look, the phone can shoot a 200 MP photo, but that's probably not its main trick. That huge resolution is more likely used strategically. You can bin pixels together for better low light or more relevant for zoom. You can capture this massive image and then digitally crop way in and still have enough detail left for a sharp shot.
Oh, okay.
The source emphasizing clear quality at 20x suggests that high megapixel count is the foundation needed for that kind of sustained telephoto performance without turning into mush.
Right, the resolution feeds the zoom. Okay, that makes more sense. So what about video creators? Those specs looked interesting too.
Yeah, video's strong. All three lenses can shoot 4K. And the main lens specifically can do 4K at 120 frames per second. That's huge for high-res slow motion. Really smooth.
But the craziest part, maybe, is the accessory they're including. A physical attachment?
Yes. We have to talk about this.
Yeah.
The source says there's a specialized periscope attachment in the box. You physically mount it onto the lens.
What does it do?
Apparently two things. Double image quality, whatever that means precisely, and better subject isolation. So basically, much better background blur, real optical bokeh.
How? Is it just like a filter, or is it actually changing the optics?
The description suggests it's a real optical component, maybe some kind of light guide or an extra lens element, something that physically alters the depth of field or the way light hits the sensor to create that blur naturally rather than just faking it with software. It really suggests Vivo is targeting people who want that pro camera look and feel, that real optical depth without carrying a separate camera. That's pretty unique for a phone.
Okay, final segment. Let's talk about keeping this beast running. Endurance, logistics. With that huge screen, the top-tier chip, and especially that power-hungry 200 MP camera system, the normal batteries wouldn't cut it, right?
Absolutely not. And Vivo clearly knew it. The battery got a massive upgrade. We're talking 65 half-and 10 milliamp.
Yeah.
That is substantial. It's not just a nice-to-have. It feels like a necessity to counteract the power drain from that sensor, all the image processing, that 120 hertz screen constantly adjusting.
It's the engine needed to make those high-end features actually usable for a full day. And the charging needs to keep up with a battery that big.
And it does. They're calling the wired charging rocket power. It hits 90 W. And wireless is still pretty quick at 40 W. So even with that enormous cell, you can top it up fast. Less waiting around.
Good stuff. Okay, last details. If someone's thinking about getting this phone, what colors are there? And anything on price or availability?
Colors are black, brown, white, and blue. Pretty standard range. On the pricing front, the source review mentioned that at the time they recorded, pricing for the Arab world wasn't available yet. So you, the listener, would definitely need to check locally for current pricing and when it actually hits shelves.
Wow.
So wrapping up the key takeaways for you, the learner, 3 things really jump out as like Vivo's strategic bets here. First, that huge 6510 milliamp battery. It's not just a feature, it's the foundation enabling everything else.
Right.
Second, the sheer audacity of that 200 MP periscope lens. It's the engine driving that promise of clear, long-range zoom. And third, throwing in that unique attachable periscope accessory. That signals they're serious about optical photography improvements, not just software tricks.
Which brings us right back to that core question from the source material. With these specific advantages, especially the wild camera system and the power to back it up, does the Vivo X300 Pro actually have what it takes to seriously challenge the big guys, like Samsung and Apple? And for you listening, what features we talked about, maybe the IP69 rating, that optical attachment, the 20x zoom, what would you prioritize most in your next phone?
And maybe the final thought is this. Vivo's intense focus on extreme zoom, that 20x clear quality, plus adding physical optical attachments.
Yeah.
It could signal a shift. Maybe flagship makers think the next frontier isn't just bigger sensors, but more versatility, more optical depth, and really pushing that telephoto reach. It's a fascinating gamble on what high-end mobile photography users really want next,